Everything is Awesome is part of Core Temp Arts, a podcast network featuring pop culture, TV, movie, and geek podcasts. Check out some of our other shows, like TV Ate My Brain, Let's Chat with Revelin Friends, and Podstalgic at coretemparts.com.
Awesome. Just tell people they're awesome and mean it.
Awesome.
Awesome. Awesome.
Did you have an awesome time? Did you drink awesome shooters and listen to awesome music and then just sit around and soak up each other's awesomeness?
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
That was awesome.
You guys are awesome.
No, you're awesome.
You are awesome.
Sir, you are awesome. Seriously.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Welcome to this week's edition of Everything is Awesome. I am your host, Kevin. This is the show where we sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. Before we get to this week's guest, normally I do this in a pre-intro or some sort of commercial, but I am going to shill right now. Make sure you come out to Atomic City Comics on March 26, 2017 from 2 to 4. Us, Doom Thugs, we're going to be live, doing live podcasting. I have some great guests. I have Brian Gray. He's a nerd rocker who's going to come out and play some nerd music for us. And we have the one, the only, the mightiest Avenger, Thor, is going to be there. It's going to be so much fun. Again, Atomic City Comics on South Street. South Street's been really kind to us, so make sure you come check us out. And it's going to be so much fun. Now, this week's guest. This week's guest is actually someone that I wanted to try to get on before we officially joined Core Temp Arts. I'm a big fan of kind of some sort of structure and storytelling and whatnot, and it would have been a good story. However, there was just a lot of, I think we're approaching episode 50 when we were joining the network, and there was just a lot of going on. It all kind of happened real quick, and I'm really excited to talk to our guest this week because something that I tried to do probably for about 9 years, which was start a podcast network, never took off. Someone else did it, and I think that's great because I don't know how to do it. And we're going to find out about that, I think, today. Please welcome to the show the founder of Core Temp Arts. Carly did not, as usual on this show, verify how to pronounce your last name. So Carly B.
Hi, Kev. Thanks for having me. That was a lovely intro. Thanks.
No, I try to, do the Kevin Smith approach of intros. And when he used to do the version of Fat Man on Batman where it was him literally just talking about Batman for an hour with a guest, he had it was probably a solid, I think I've done it once, but he had a solid 5-minute intro for everybody.
Wow. That's impressive. I don't think you can have 5 minutes on me. I'm not that interesting. I don't even know what I'm doing on this show.
Well, and see, that's actually, part at least my point of the show is not to I never take notes, and that's something that is probably very evident to my audience. I whatever audience that is, I don't even I'm a terrible podcaster because
I doubt that.
I don't know. I'm good at talking. That's a given, but I when it comes to the business side of it, self-marketing, and which I've always been terrible at, but keeping it with numbers, that was Kev of yesteryear. That was the Kev of 8 years of podcasting.
Right.
And with this show, with Everything is Awesome, my whole approach is whatever, I don't care. And I look at the numbers at the end of the month just to see if we're trending up. And other than that, I really don't and I don't even care if we do. It's just that's nice. It's, I don't know, it makes podcasting a whole lot more fun and fulfilling.
Yes, I agree. I don't look at my numbers or our numbers at all either. The service that I use sends me an email every Sunday, but I check those out and then I just kind of keep it moving because I feel like it's kind of like watching a water boil. You know what I mean? Waiting for a pot to boil, where it's kind of like you'll just drive yourself crazy trying to see, the incremental increase in your numbers. It's just whatever. That's not what I'm doing it for. I'm doing it for the interaction. I'm doing it for meeting cool people like you, and I'm doing it for just whatever, because it's fun.
Yeah, and and this something that I've been trying to do. I've been in the game for 10 years. This June will be my 10th year of podcasting, and I would say October of that first year of mine, we did a live show. We were doing live podcasting before it was a thing.
Wow.
And And I say that I did it once. Like I shouldn't really tout it like I was like the innovator of it, but that's like my thing now is like live podcasting is such like an, at least in where are you from?
I'm from New York.
Okay, you're the one that's from New York.
Yes.
Okay. So New York is I would imagine just based off of like some of the people I know up there that are in podcasting, like New York City and LA and Chicago, like they all seem like podcasting cities, like where you can get away with having mainstream podcasters that do their shows live on a somewhat regular basis.
Right.
But like Philly, and like I say that I had James D'Amato from the One Shot podcast on, and we had a little like joking pissing contest about which city was better with podcasting. But like I know we're probably, Philadelphia is not the podcasting capital of the world yet, but like we have such like a great indie just artists environment here in Philly, like that includes more than just podcasters. But I think it's nuts that we have a 4-day podcast festival across 2 weekends with over 30 shows. Like that I don't see any other festival doing that, and that's like the thing that like that needs to get showcased more. And that's like kind of my driving goal now that I'm in my second year, what I'm calling my year 2. Like I rebooted podcasting for me last year, and like my year 2 is like, let's just get Philly or just live podcasting in general for these like us indie guys. Let's do it live. Let's like get more people on us.
I mean, that's an amazing goal. And I think that for us indie guys, that's the thing, to kind of find something that kind of that's something that'll bring people to podcasting. We don't have the name yet, like the Kevin Smiths or the Chris Hardwicks and things like that, but we can have other things there, and doing live shows is a great first step.
Yeah, and it's like if you can find a way to like make your show different, or at least work for a live audience, because it's two different beasts. Doing the show that I'm doing right now with you is much different than me doing this show live. Like I can't do like this show doesn't, no offense to you, with any guest. I could have Stone Cold Steve Austin on, and for me to sit around for an hour talking to him probably isn't going to be very entertaining unless you're like a hardcore wrestling fan.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you like if you can find a way to adapt to that live setting, and like I was very fortunate to kind of come up in like the era of Stickcam. Do you remember Stickcam or ever hear Stickcam?
No.
Okay, so Stickcam started right around 2006, if I remember correctly, and it was basically the YouTube of live streaming. It was around like Ustream was around, Blog TV was around, and YouTube wasn't streaming yet.
No.
Facebook wasn't streaming. There was really limited options for video streaming, and they were like the number one market while they were around. And that's how I came up with all my podcasts, was doing them live, and my mindset has always been as a live personality, because once you do it on a streaming service, it's out there. So like, why edit? So like that's my carefree personality of like not preparing for interviews and not really caring if I leave the uhs and ums in, all comes from live, and I think it's a great, last September I challenged people to do a podcast for International Podcast Day.
Yeah. And
like I think this year the challenge is, if you are a podcaster, like do it live, like find a way to do it live, because it's such a cool experience.
It would be cool. I'm someone that came I grew up doing live theater, and doing that, and I felt fairly comfortable with it. But I can't even wrap my head around me doing a live podcast, because I'm very, like the opposite of what you said that you are. I'm very much a stickler for like making sure that everything is clean, and I get rid of all the like sniffles and coughs and all that stuff, and I get very anal when it comes to the podcast editing and all that stuff. But that would be a challenge for me to kind of just do a live show. I would have to completely restructure one of my shows, but that would be fun, yeah.
It is something that I think like every podcaster should do at least once. And I know like it's actually, like I said, it's strange trying like looking up these different festivals, because like looking up a New York one, the New York Comic Con is like pretty much mainstreamers from what I can tell, or like it's hard to find information out about it because it's like a really like I don't know, it just seems like it's a, you know, you have to be at this level to get in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing with like, you know, well, I haven't looked into LA Podcast Fest because that's, you know, across the country, but like DC Podcast Fest I tried to get into that, and like it like no one, like they were just back and forth. They didn't like get back to me about anything. They were really like dodgy with it, and like I get it, like they're charging, like, you know, that's another great thing about the Philly Podcast Fest is it's free. Like we don't charge listeners to come in, and like I'm seeing, I've never seen a ticket price this high, $100 to get into the podcast festival in DC, and I was like, that's insane. Like, you're asking people who can listen to these shows for free to pay $100 for the live experience to I mean, maybe I'm looking at it from the Philadelphia point of view, where we have what I would consider one or two mainstream podcasts in our city that are still really cool enough to come and do the podcast fest. But other than that, it's like, it's just all indie guys. Like, $100 is outrageous.
Yeah. No, that kind of makes me think of, are you ever like scared that you're not going to have a live audience? Like no one's going to show up?
I've had no one show up.
And what do? You still do the show?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had, I've done the show live now 1, 2, 3, I think 4 times, and this will be my 5th time coming up in March here. And we lucked out with our first one being the Podcast Fest, and we had like what I would consider a sizable audience. It looked like it was about 20 to 25 people. You know, one of the guys that were there that I knew, they said that, you know, there wasn't much seating left, but it was like in a small back room of a bar.
Okay.
And like I was like, that's a huge win for me. Like that's 25 people that are just coming here to see me talk and be stupid. And then the next one that I did after that was in New York, for New York Comic Con, not for New York Comic Con, but like the weekend of New York Comic Con. And that was like a pretty good audience. Like we had a sizable audience. But everyone was drunk, so like it wasn't fair to say that I was funny because they were just drunk. Then we had one in November at a great little music store on South Street in Philly, Bridgeset Sound. Huge fan of them. They don't sponsor this show, but they did sponsor a couple live shows we did prior to today. And I dropped the ball. This is probably why we didn't have anyone show up except for like my guest wife. Like that was the only person, and then the owner of the store was in the audience.
Right.
But I didn't promote it. Like my uncle had passed away a couple weeks before we went live, and he was battling cancer. So the whole year I was dealing with that whole thing, and especially like the months leading up to that November show. Like, but I found his cancer came back in August, like the day before our Podcast Fest show. So like from Podcast Fest to Bridgeset Sound show, like I was just like emotionally not there. And so I didn't promote it. So I take blame on that one. But yeah, we still did it because, why not? Like podcasting, it is just, it's, you don't need an audience. Like it didn't start out with an audience. So you just adapt.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess the show must go on at some point, right?
Yeah. And I mean, we were streaming it to Facebook. So there could have been people like, that's a whole nother thing. Like now, like I'm used to streaming live video, but not in like while I'm doing it in a venue. So like, I'm not paying attention to it. So I don't know, like, yeah, it really gets, you can break it down into so many different formats of doing it live. And that's actually like a pretty good, like way to start. Like if you don't want to fully jump in to doing like a live show at a venue, doing it on like streaming it live on Facebook or on YouTube or wherever you can stream it these days, like is a great first step because you can just pretend there's no one there.
Yeah, that's true. Blab, did you ever use Blab at all before it went away?
No, I've never even heard of that.
Well, Blab was this kind of broadcasting thing. We did a couple of episodes of We Got Five, which is also on Core Temp Arts. And they did, I think, 2 episodes. And it's super fun. You were allowed like 4 people on at one time. There was a chat room and it was broadcasted live, and then you can have a link and turn it into audio or put it on YouTube, whatever. And that was a lot of fun, but that went away. But services like that, like streaming, like you said, YouTube and Facebook, those are kind of coming up. I'm waiting for for Facebook to kind of have more opportunities to be, I don't know, to be more robust. You know what I mean? So I can have more than just me streaming something.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm actually, I'm teasing that now for our live show in March because for our Podiversary show that we did in January, we streamed audio through Wildfire Radio, which is like a great little like broadcast podcast company out of South Jersey, the greater Philadelphia area. And they have a lot of great shows on their network, and they were kind enough to let us stream on their service for the day. But that's like an audio stream, and I don't know, like the idea of doing a live show is you're being different because you're in front of a live audience, so it's very usually visual. Like at the Philadelphia Podcast Fest, we had one of my buddies who was a fitness trainer there, and like we were doing, like he made us do push-ups and this weird ab roller thing, so it was very, very visual. So the listening audience at home that was streaming it live, they missed out on that because it wasn't live video. So we're playing with that now. And you can get a little bit more robust if you use like a service like, I don't know, have you heard of like XSplit or that's the only one I really know of. It's like a video streaming software.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, I would recommend looking that up. And it's actually like, I just tested it the other day. It is insane how easy they've made it. Like it's like you used to have to get like the specific live key code for Facebook that you were using for that instance that you were going to do. And now it's literally you open up XSplit, you connect it to Facebook, and you say you want to go live through XSplit, and it connects you up, and you can do really cool things like having a splash screen, so you can go live 5 minutes before you actually are supposed to start, so people can like start joining the room and whatnot, and they'll just see a little pretty splash screen. You can have different cameras hooked up, so you can do a 1-shot, a 2-shot. There's so much you can do, and I could go on for hours about it because that's how I got started. Really, my year 2 or 3 through like 6 for me was live streaming video, and I got really into it. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's if you can find a way to make Facebook robust, it's just another knowledge set that you need.
Right, through a third party.
Yeah, through a third party. And I'm telling you, like, if you have time in the next couple of days, like download a trial of XSplit and just play around with it. I have just the free version, and it works with Facebook Live, so it's pretty cool so far.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I definitely will. I'm taking a lot of notes, learning a lot from you, Kev.
Well, I'm surprised we're getting into it this early, but let's kind of kick into interview mode, and let's start with your origin point. Like, where are you from originally?
I'm from New York. I was born and raised in New York City.
Born and raised. So you're still in the actual city of New York?
No, I've since have kids and moved out to right outside of New York in Jersey. But
okay. Oh, so okay.
Still in New York. Will always and forever be.
Well, like if you're in, I used to do work out there a lot. So like a lot of times I would get sent to Hoboken, New Jersey to do work. And I'd be like, God damn it. Like, why? Just send me to New York at this point. Like I'm driving 2.5 hours either way. Like the only thing you might be saving me on is that drive through either Lincoln Tunnel or over the bridge.
That's another good hour sometimes. Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with just New York, like New York in general, not necessarily New York City, but like, because actually doing work in New York City was rare for me, but like going to Long Island a lot to do work, and going up to like Rochester to do work back when I used to travel. having to go through the Lincoln Tunnel or the GW Bridge, I hated it. I would constantly find ways to take the whatever that bridge is through Staten Island.
Oh, the Verrazano.
Yeah, the Verrazano. Because that never was bad. That was always just a nice little drive.
Yeah, except that it's like $20.
Oh, see,
So, or probably more. Who knows? I don't take that.
10. Let's see. Well, oh God, I don't know how long ago this was. I'd say I was 21. So 11 years ago is when I started traveling to New York for work and whatnot. So like 10, 11 years ago, it was expensive, but I don't think it was $20 to go over the bridge. Like it was expensive to go over the GW Bridge.
Yeah.
I always thought that was ridiculous.
I mean, every year I feel like they get higher and higher, but it just is what it is, you know. If you want to go into New York, you just have to kind of bite the bullet, you know.
Yeah.
Easy Pass is your friend.
Yeah, well, and that's how it is in Pennsylvania too with our turnpike. I remember back 10 years ago, it used to be like I think $15 for me to drive from here to like Pittsburgh or Ohio for work if I had a site that I had to go to out there. And now I haven't been out there in probably 2 or 3 years at this point. But the last time we drove out to visit family out in Pittsburgh, it was like $25, and now I think I saw that they raised the prices, and it's like $30. It's oh God, I hate driving now. It's just awful.
I know.
Unless I'm like in my little 5-mile radius of home.
Yeah.
So born and raised in New York.
Yes.
Cause see, I say I'm from Philly, but I've always been a suburbs boy. Like I'm fake Philly. I've never been in the heart of the city.
Yeah.
As far as living. So what's it like growing up and living in the city as a kid?
It's pretty amazing. I mean, I was born, like if you take the island of Manhattan, I was born and raised in the northern part of Manhattan, which is Washington Heights, Inwood area.
Okay.
So predominantly when I was there, it was predominantly a Dominican neighborhood. So my parents are from the Dominican Republic. And it was actually pretty great. Sure, the 80s had a lot of like drugs or whatever, but it was what it was. But in the kind of just growing up in the city in general, anyone that grew up in the city kind of knows it's just, you have people from everywhere, and you kind of just are, you know what I mean? They are. I found it to be very inclusive. I know that's not the experience for a lot of people, but for me, it kind of was. And also, you felt cool. If that sounds kind of, I don't want it to sound pretentious, but you felt cool. You're from New York, and everywhere else is crappy, when you're like growing up before you know better. But no, it was actually it was a good fun time. Like I had a really great childhood, and I went to high school in Chinatown, so I had that experience of, my high school was kind of like on the border of Chinatown and the Lower East Side, which is a lot of Puerto Rican and Black folks and stuff. So that was a great time too, and I went to, junior high. It was like the Upper West Side, and that was an experience in and of itself. So, I had a good run of the entire city of, in the entire Manhattan, let's say. The outer boroughs, that came once I was a little older, and, you kind of get to explore that more.
Yeah, it's my experience with New York specifically is, I think once like an elementary school trip to the Bronx Zoo is probably my first experience with New York, which is obviously nothing. It's basically me going to the Philadelphia Zoo.
Right. The Bronx Zoo is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think that might have been the zoo where I saw a couple bears doing it.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I forget. That the elementary school to me kind of blends all together. But I feel like if it was elementary school, it had to be there because I don't remember. I think we went to the Philadelphia Zoo once, and I would have remembered if it was the Philly Zoo. And then, like as like a teenager, going with my uncle and some of my cousins, and then really like just to go exploring New York City like as like for fun. Like I've only done maybe 2 or 3 times, and one of them was last year when I wouldn't even say I was there for New York Comic Con because I didn't go to the con. But we went to, just me and my buddy just kind of walked around and checked out Madame Tussauds and ate food and then did our live show. So I have yet to get like a full New York City experience.
Well, I think now it's so much different than, for example, than when I was growing up or even when I was in my early 20s. High school is my early 20s, where now it feels, I go around, I drive by the neighborhood where I grew up and everything is very, very gentrified, or I go around the area of my high school where I spent a lot of time there because I also did theater after high school in that area on the Lower East Side, and everything just kind of feels very generic, Everything is corporate and generic, and that's, I don't know, probably the outer boroughs now are having more of a personality, but I think growing up, Manhattan had its true like personality, and now I feel like all that is being scrubbed away, so that quote unquote New York experience is so much different now than it was even 10-20 years ago.
It's funny that you say that, because when I was preparing for our show there last year or in October, I was like, it was in Hell's Kitchen. I was like, oh, that's awesome, Daredevil Town, and and I was like, so I was doing a whole bunch of like, I get lost in Wikipedia like rabbit holes and whatnot. That's a term that I saw all over about Hell's Kitchen, and I was like, what the? So it's not that, like, it's not that. It's just a
No.
It's just another section of the town now. It's not. It's not Daredevil.
No, it's not Daredevil. It's funny because when my husband and I, we were watching the first season and even the second season, we brought it up again. But we're watching it, we're just kind of like, why? Everything is, because it's Daredevil, and I'm guessing that's how it was in the comics. Everything was like Hell's Kitchen, and it was bad and it's full of corruption, yada yada yada. And to some extent, I'm sure every place is like that. But the Hell's Kitchen that we live in today is nothing like it is on Daredevil anymore. And it just, being from New York, it just kind of rang false. And it's just, and to me, I just would turn to him and be like, I'm sure people that aren't from New York would buy it, and that would be okay with them. But when you're from New York and kind of what's going on and the neighborhood more or less, you're just kind of like, no, this is not like that anymore. It used to be maybe the 70s, 80s, maybe when Daredevil was, was created, but not anymore. So.
Yeah, well, and it's definitely like, and I'm a terrible comic book fan because I don't really read comic books anymore, but and Daredevil was one that I never really read unless he popped up in like Spider-Man. Right. But the idea of Daredevil that I know of, at least, is that like even in 2017 Daredevil, like the Hell's Kitchen that's represented there is very much the corrupted Hell's Kitchen. So that's why I think that's why they kind of brought it into the show.
Yeah, or like the super dangerous, because my dad is still a huge Daredevil fan. He learned to read in English with the Daredevil Spider-Man comics. So Daredevil, when he was reading it in the, when he was a kid, was like that. The Hell's Kitchen was like that. It was really dangerous. You couldn't really, be there past a certain time. Like, it was what is represented in the comic books. But for it to kind of still be that representation now, it's just a little strange when you're from there. But when you're not, well, it works.
Yeah, and I mean, I get that too. Like, as far as like, because Marvel takes place as it's not DC where it takes place in fictional cities. It takes, not one city in a Marvel comic book is fake. It's all usually New York, but I guess some West Coast stuff too. But it's all real. So like it does hurt them to be in these real cities, because there is an expectation of how we representing the city of New York, because it is a real life city, versus when Batman depicts Gotham as being a terrible dark place, you can buy that because Gotham doesn't exist.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's so awesome that your dad learned to read off a comic book.
Yes.
it's or not. I shouldn't say learn how to read English off
yeah.
a comic book.
Yeah, no, he did. And Daredevil is like Daredevil and Spider-Man is like everything that I just kind of grew up him talking about, not in detail. Like I'm not a comic book nerd, but he was just really excited. So when the Ben Affleck movie came out, he was sorely disappointed, and he was so
really?
very upset about it because it wasn't what he thought it was.
That's a shame because I actually really I haven't watched it probably since it first came out on DVD, but I actually kind of dug it. Like I wasn't, and again I come from not being a Daredevil comic book fan. Yeah. But and maybe it's because I like and I still to this day I just really enjoy Ben Affleck. Like I think he's a great actor. Mm-hmm. Probably because he got to start with Kevin Smith is probably why I give him too much credit because. I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan too, and Kevin Smith was in Daredevil. Like I have a special place for that movie in my heart. It definitely to me, and I think I definitely have to take a seat back and look at the comic book moviescape now because it's so huge. Mm-hmm. But back in the days of the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie, it wasn't such a huge genre that it is now.
No,
so
not at all.
Yeah, and so I've always kind of classified around when Iron Man came out. My classification was, well, you have these Iron Man superhero movies like Iron Man and Dark Knight, and these movies are just top notch superhero movies. Then you have pretty much everything else, which is your Fantastic Fours, your Daredevils. They're just not quite as good as Spider-Man or Batman or Iron Man. And then you have the Ang Lee's Hulk, which was to this day the shittest movie I have ever seen. It is, I hate it. There's nothing I like about it, and I don't know why. I have a buddy who loves movies, and the thing that he loves about that movie is those dopey comic book transitions, and that's what I hate about the movie. Probably hate more than anything else about that movie. And for the longest time, that was as long as you do better than Ang Lee's Hulk, you're a good movie. Right. And I think that's why I liked the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie, because it was better than Ang Lee's Hulk.
Sure, I guess. I don't know. I didn't mind Ang Lee's Hulk. I think Ang Lee is a great director. Maybe it wasn't the best Hulk, but I didn't mind it. But I don't know. There's something about I'm not a Ben Affleck fan.
Oh.
So I don't know if there's anything that he makes that I'm going to be kind of crazy about. That being said, the Ben Affleck and Kevin Smith, Chasing Amy was one of my favorite movies when it came out.
That is, to date, my favorite movie of all time.
It's great. It's such a good movie. And I loved it. And I remember watching it over and over and over again. Back when I wanted to be a screenwriter or filmmaker or whatever, I was like, I want to make movies like this about people and relationships, whatever. But I like Ben Affleck in that movie, but I don't like Ben Affleck in general. So every time he pops up, I'm just kind of whatever. I don't know. There was something about that Daredevil though that just didn't work for me. It was a movie and it was fun, but I mean, that's how I feel about it.
Well, I mean, especially, if before Daredevil TV show, there was nothing else to really compare it to except for other superhero movies.
Right.
So for me, when I sit down and compare it to Marvel's Daredevil, there's no comparison.
No.
Hey there, super friends, it's Kev. I'm just going to interrupt this show for a minute or two so I can do some housekeeping. If you want to help support this show, you can do it in several different ways. One of those ways, I'll read your name on air right here, not just your name, but your whole review, by leaving a 5-star review, or any review, really. I'll read all of them. But hopefully you're kind enough to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. Just go to our iTunes page, subscribe to the page, that way you don't miss an episode, and of course leave that 5-star text review. iTunes Math does a lot of good things that make more people listen to the show, and that means more cool things happen to Everything Is Awesome. Another way that you can support is word of mouth recommendations. Just tell friends to listen to Everything Is Awesome. Put it on when you're carpooling together on your way to work or on your way to Comic-Con or whatever. And the final way, this one may cost you a little bit of money, but that's okay. If you go to patreon.com/thatentertains, the other ways you help support us are just as good, free for nothing, help us. But this one, if you pledge some money to us, we'll give you some more stuff in return. You know, and by we I mean Jason Ashley from Too Cool for Tabletop and I, we like to say $12 a year, bro. $1 a month is really nothing to you. You skip anything for one day, and that's more than $1. And that helps make our dreams come true, really, if I'm going to be honest. That's entertainment, which is what funds this podcast, is running a Patreon, patreon.com/thatentertains. And I mean, really, honestly, if we could hit $25 a month of support, that would be wonderful. It means bills are covered for us, and that's really all I want at the end of the day. And everything else is just icing on the cake. It means we get to do more upgrades, it means we get to create more content, and a lot of the stuff that we want to do is at least early access for you guys that pledge to us on patreon.com/thatentertains, or we'll even do some exclusive content. We're working on some things now that we're thinking of for exclusive content that we'll do randomly throughout the year and whatnot. So again, if you want to help support this podcast, go to patreon.com/thatentertains. Not just supporting this podcast, but you're supporting That's Entertainment, which means that even more content besides this podcast will come at you. We're talking skits, sketches, web series, movies, a whole ton of content that we have that we want to do that will eventually get done anyway, but with your help we can get it done sooner. If you don't want to spend any cash, I completely get it. I understand it. iTunes reviews help us tremendously, as well as word of mouth recommendations. Finally, you can also go to the contact page on awesomepodcast.com and subscribe to our newsletter. We're going to start sending out weekly reminders of the things that we've posted throughout the week, as well as spotlights on the guests that we've had on our podcasts. And we're also going to be sending out reminders or notifications about new things that we're working on, events that we're going to be doing and whatnot. So just another place to get some more detailed information. We're going to try to make it unique enough for you so that it's worth us invading your inbox. This has been more than a minute or two. So let's get back to the conversation.
But it's also hard to compare anything to the current kind of landscape that we're in with superhero movies, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm saying this just as a fan of movies, not necessarily a comic book fan or even comic book, movies. But it's hard. Like, I find it kind of hard to even compare the first Iron Man to like the current, to something like Civil War or something like that. You know what I mean? So I think that it's changed so much that it's hard to do that.
Obviously, I think that first Iron Man movie still holds up. That one is, I mean, obviously, without that movie and without Robert Downey Jr. and without Jon Favreau, I don't think you get the Marvel Cinematic Universe we have. No. I don't even know if you get beyond maybe, the first phase of movies. That movie is like near perfect. Like I really enjoy the first Iron Man movie. And I don't know if I would say it's my favorite superhero movie of all time, especially since I haven't seen some of the again, this is why I'm a terrible fan of comic books and comic book movies. It's like I haven't seen Ant-Man yet. I haven't seen Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
I blame the kids. I just there's no time.
Yes, I feel you on that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just the kids. I also am busy. I'd rather be a content creator. Too. Yeah. So I don't see all these movies all the time. I'm trying to talk myself into, not that I need to do much. I'm actually holding myself back from going to see Logan tomorrow night because, oh my God, there's nothing that negative I've heard about that movie.
Yeah, me too. I've actually also heard this morning that grown men are crying like babies during this movie. So
and that Logan for me, and not just Logan but X-Men for me, that X-Men was really what kind of kicked off to me, even 17, 18 years later. I think that came out in 99 or 2000, the first X-Men. That kind of kicked off the current boom of superhero movies we have. Schumacher killed it with Batman and Robin and Batman Forever. Like he killed the superhero franchise.
Yeah, he kind of shot it in the face.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Like-
Fox owns and still owns the X-Men movies, right? But I think you're
Yes.
right. You're totally right. Those first X-Men movies, they did really well. They were a lot of fun. I remember kind of the backlash about people and the suits and the casting and all that. But outside of all that, they were really just kind of fun movies to watch. And I agree with you. They did kick off the whole kind of superhero thing.
And to date, that first X-Men movie is probably the movie I've seen in a theater more than any other movie. Like I think I saw that at least 10 times in the theater.
Wow, the first one?
Yeah, and when that movie came out, I was still in high school. I was 6. If it came out in 2000, I was around 15 or 16 years old. So I was like the right age for that movie. I had just like kind of graduated from like reading comic books to just like, I don't read comic books, but I'll watch a comic book movie. That's cool. And there was just something about like, Patrick Stewart being Xavier is just a genius casting move. And that movie just clicked on all the right levels, and it was that era of X-Men and Spider-Man where X-Men was just such a great movie, and then Spider-Man 1 came out, and that was even better, and then X2 came out, and that was better, and then Spider-Man 2 came out, and that was better, and then they had a third movie each, and the world was a little sad.
Yeah.
But and that's not fair. I enjoyed both those movies, both their third trilogy movies, but when Days of Future Past came out, like that was like for me a huge deal. Like that was everyone's moment of like Star Wars is coming back. That was Days of Future Past for me, because it was like, holy crap, the original cast is coming back to the X-Men franchise.
Right.
And that was like such a huge deal for me. So like the X-Men franchise is probably, whereas it's not my favorite franchise at all, like I just really like what Marvel's doing with the MCU. The X-Men franchise is the most important franchise to me, and that's, it comes to an end or at least it seems like it's coming to an end with Logan. Like Logan seemingly is going to put a nice little bow on the last 17 years of X-Men movies.
Yeah, but what will you do when they reboot it in like 2 years?
Well, so I like what they're like. I mean, they are kind of already doing that. Like they're already talking about doing the I don't know if they're going to use the cast from, First Class, but they're going to do one set in the 90s, and they're still like, I think they're, as long as they don't reboot it in the sense of like continuity,
right.
Like that's something. We now live in a world where the popular masses actually like understand how a comic book kind of works, and like, to be fair, they always have. Like James Bond is nothing but more than a comic book character who just gets a new actor to play the same role. Like the audience is ready and primed for that, and I think go and cast a new Wolverine and have it be a new actor, but don't lose the history that you have with that character in your movies. There's no reason that you need to do an origin story. There's no reason that you need to just retell stories. Just continue telling new stories with the character, I guess,
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, that I don't think that the execs realize that, I think that they have to dumb it down and give us an origin story every time, every 2 years or 3 years or whatever. I mean, look what's happening with Spider-Man. I don't think anyone needed to have, all the Spider-Man movies that we've had, especially given, the same kind of within that same kind of story arc.
Yeah.
But we have them.
And I think, but I think Marvel taking that over has corrected that. Like they're not doing a huge origin story for Spider-Man now.
Oh, that's what, yeah.
Yeah, like I think in Homecoming, like obviously in Homecoming he's already Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we're gonna see is something. Now I didn't see Batman versus Superman because You saw the trailers.
I haven't seen it yet either.
But you know, from what I understand, like the way they handled Batman's origin for this new version of Batman was very good. Like they handled it in like flashbacks, and it was very like tastefully done, and it was done in a way that doesn't treat the audience like idiots.
Right.
So I think Marvel, you know, it sounds like they have the creative control of this character now as well, and Sony's kind of just collecting a paycheck.
Yeah.
So I think they're gonna be smart with it, and like to be honest, like for the first, and now Tom Holland I think is in his early 20s now,
Yes.
but for the first time we have a young kid, a young man playing Spider-Man who looks like a kid, like he looks like a teenager. So, like, I'm excited. I think the new Spider-Man, first of all, I thought he did great in Civil War. I thought he brought to the table the best of both Garfield and Maguire. Like, in my opinion, Tobey Maguire was a really good Peter Parker, kind of a shitty Spider-Man. But Andrew Garfield he reminded me, when I read a Spider-Man comic book, or when I used to read a Spider-Man comic book, like the voice I heard in my head was that awesome 90s cartoon that we had.
Yeah.
And it was very, like, you know, quick-witted and very sharp with humor and whatnot. And that was the Spider-Man in The Amazing Spider-Man. Like, I watched the first movie and I kind of enjoyed it. Like, I could see why everyone hated it, but I kind of enjoyed it. The second one was awful, but I kind of enjoyed that first Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield, and it was because of his portrayal as Spider-Man. Shitty Peter Parker, amazing Spider-Man, and this kid Tom Holland brings both aspects, like a great Peter Parker, a great Spider-Man, like a believable kid that's just trying to do the right thing. I don't know, I love it.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see what he's gonna bring, and I think that I don't know, I have good feelings about the new movie. I just feel like maybe we didn't need it. You know what I mean? I
as long as they
the last incarnation for a while.
Yeah, and I agree with you, because when the Amazing Spider-Man came out, I was like, "Are you kidding? Like we just had Tobey Maguire."
Yeah.
And like that, like I was really bent out of shape about it, because Spider-Man along with the X-Men movies, like that was because the first movies came out within a year of each other. So like. I overall probably enjoyed the Maguire Spider-Man movies more than the X-Men movies, but you know they both just were like the first for the most part, and I was just really sour on them rebooting it. Like I think it was less than like 5 years after the third Spider-Man movie. Like it was a ridiculously short amount of time.
No, and it's ridiculous. And again, I don't know. I'm hoping that after Logan, because it's out already, like we don't have a completely new reboot of X-Men in another 2 to 3 years, so I just kind of I would like them to kind of chill on the churning these superhero movies out, and I'd rather just have a good movie, whether it's Marvel or DC. And and
Marvel, let's be honest.
Yeah, well, Marvel. Yeah, because DC is just kind of crap in the bed. I saw Suicide Squad. And again, I'm not like a superhero aficionado, but I saw Suicide Squad, and I don't think I've been that bored at an action movie, or a superhero movie at that in my entire life. Like I was very surprised at the level of boredom that I had throughout that movie.
Now, I will give that movie the benefit of the doubt that I started watching it at 11 p.m., but I fell asleep during it.
Yeah.
And for you to get me to fall asleep during, like, I've never was on board with Leto's Joker. Like, I was like, I mean, we'll see. I said, we'll see.
Yeah.
But, like, it's not my Joker. I mean, it's never going to be Mark Hamill unless it's Mark Hamill. So, whatever. And my biggest problem with the DC EU or whatever they call their extended universe over there, is that it's just like they're dumb. Like Marvel, like even though they kind of keep their TV universe and their movie universe separate, like there's just like they're this in the same universe. They just don't talk about one another. They're just like really shy with one another, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I must say that. Out of the two, the TV universe, I find more my speed because it feels more adult. It feels like they can not only because they have a longer span to tell maybe a story arc or whatever, but I think that they can talk about themes,
Yeah.
that are more kind of my speed. For example,
Especially in the Netflix series. Like
exactly, no, exactly. Like the Jessica Jones was perhaps one of my
yes.
favorite things
Yes.
that Marvel has put out in a really long time, and it's because it kind of dealt with things that I could relate to,
Well,
and I think that the movies can't really do that because they're
yeah.
appealing to the masses.
And like the one thing that Marvel had a hard time excelling at was like a really good villain. And Daredevil, Kingpin was an excellent villain, and then they topped that with Kilgrave, by David Tennant's Kilgrave.
Yep.
And I mean, maybe it's because I'm just a huge David Tennant fan, but like I just thought, and I think the first movie to maybe get a villain right was Civil War with Zemo.
Mm-hmm.
And my argue point for the best villain so far in the Marvel universe that I've seen, there's some movies I haven't seen yet, but it's between Kilgrave from Jessica Jones and Zemo from Civil War. They're just two of the greatest villains that the cinematic universe has put out. But yeah, DC just and I mean, Chris and I have gone on about this on TV8 My Brain,
Yeah.
but like DC doesn't combine your TV, like the TV CW shows, the Berlantiverse as I call it.
Yeah.
Like it is. I think it's personally better than the non-Netflix Marvel shows, which I guess is really just Agents of Shield.
Yeah.
But I haven't watched Agents of Shield or Gotham for at least a year now. And I'm maybe a week behind on the CW shows, and I have panic attacks about it because Berlanti is just doing him and Kreisberg. They just know how to handle those characters, and the fact that they can get it so right on the CW, but get it so wrong on the big screen blows my mind.
Well, it may have something to do with the fact that I think DC is just trying to put out these movies out so quickly that they're just forgetting about what makes a movie good. You know what I mean? You have to put in the work. You have to have a good script, and you have to, have a good director and all that stuff. So, and I just think that they're just
you got none of that with Snyder.
Right. And so to me, it's just they're just trying to put out the movies to possibly compete with Marvel, and what they're doing is hurting their brand. And on TV, hopefully Berlanti isn't, spreading himself out too thin. I don't watch The Flash or Arrow. I just watch Supergirl, but it seems like he knows what he's doing, and it seems better thought out. So I don't know what DC does need to get their shit together.
If you enjoy Supergirl, you should really be watching The Flash. Those two shows go so well hand in hand together. The Flashes, I know that in the writer's room, they have the 3 H's: heart, heroics, and god damn it, what is that third H? There's a third H.
Yeah.
I never remember the H's, but there's it's humor. Humor's the third one.
Okay.
And it's just an equal balance. They try to have an equal balance, and they usually have a little bit more heart in there to because it's a very heart-filled show. And I feel like they took that concept and brought it over to Supergirl because tonally those shows are very similar. Much different. Arrow is the broody big brother of those shows. Mm-hmm. And I mean, Legends of Tomorrow is very enjoyable, but I can understand that's not that one is more of you don't need to watch that to know what's going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you would enjoy Flash if you enjoy Supergirl, because that's my selling point to all the guys I talk to who don't watch Supergirl is if you like the Flash, I assure you're gonna love Supergirl.
Yeah. The thing is that I watch a lot of TV, and there's so much TV out there that I have to that I feel like I have to prioritize over starting
it.
something new. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of where I am now. Maybe
No,
eventually I'll catch up with it at some point.
I 100% understand. I mean, that's why I gave up on Gotham. That's why I gave up on, Agents. I don't want to say gave up. I will eventually go back to them.
I mean, Agents of
But
Shield is like that last episode of Agents of Shield, and everyone who saw it will probably agree with me. That was fucking awesome. Like it was just straight up an awesome hour of TV. And I want to say starting last year, maybe the fight choreography, like that fight choreography team is like the best in the business. I hear Arrow has really great fight choreography, but
yeah.
Agents of Shield is just doing something really special over there. And in terms of directing and camera movements and all that, and the story has really gotten a lot better than it did in like season 1 and even season 2. I mean, I don't know, Agents of Shield has become such a great show.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I've heard that, and I don't know. There's something like that Shirtless Boy Network is just like that's where my fun shows are.
it.
So. Yeah, I need to sit down and like just binge watch and catch up on Agents of Shield because I'm sure I'll enjoy it. Because like, again, I would say if I'm anything, I'm a Marvel head. I'm a Marvel zombie, as they used to say, and like save for when it comes to Batman, like Batman, who is really just a Marvel character. I've always enjoyed Marvel more than DC, except when it comes to like the normal TV universe. Like before Netflix, I was always like, Marvel just doesn't know what they're doing on the small screen. And for a while it was true. They couldn't quite grasp it.
Yeah.
So to go back to the actual interview though, before we wrap, in the next like 10 minutes or so. So when you were in high school, you had an interest in like theater and writing and directing?
Yes, I did theater. I did, high school theater, and that kind of sparked an interest in that creative side of me. So after high school, I continued to do community theater in New York and regional theater, mainly behind the scenes because I'm not an actor or a performer by any stretch of the imagination, but but directing and writing and lighting and all behind the scenes stuff, and that was really fun. And at the when I was about 23, 24, I joined this nonprofit organization for women of color in media. So I got the opportunity to kind of learn video and short film, the art of the short film and video making and editing and all that stuff. And I got into that, and I didn't do so much theater because I was doing short films and all that, and I got to create, make my own, produce, write, direct, and produce my own short film, my first short film, take it to festivals and kind of do all that.
That's so awesome.
And then I then kind of became a mentor at that same organization and mentored in film and video and short filmmaking, other young women kind of coming up and doing the same thing. And that was also very fulfilling and fun in different ways. And then I stopped because, I started a family and I didn't have that much time or energy or money or anything like that. And that's kind of how I got into podcasting.
That was going to be my next question, but I do want to comment. Like that's like now at 32 going on 33. And I should say probably when I was 25, 26, despite being a Kevin Smith fan for probably close to a decade at that point, it wasn't until just like watching Clerks for like the 50th time where I was like, I want to do this, and it's still figuring that out like 5-7 years later, but like that's another part of our year two of like rebooting everything that like our the podcasting stuff and everything is like, let's like do video production for real and whatnot. So like we're actually like finally like writing scripts and like getting it's interesting to hear that your story getting to that, because it's like, oh my god, that's like we're totally just talking about doing like we're writing a 30-minute short right now.
No, and that's a lot of fun. I just got interviewed for a book that someone's writing about my time, about that time of my life and that
Yeah.
this organization. Um, and that was, it was weird because just in the person asking me all these questions and kind of reminiscing and telling them the story about everything, one of the questions was like, hey, would you like to go back to that? And my answer without skipping a beat is like, of course, 100%. I would love to go back to making movies and you know, and creating all that, producing, directing, whatever. But it's something that takes so much time, and so much energy and so much just, you know, financial, you know, money period,
Yeah.
that I'm just kind of like, I just don't have the ambition to kind of go for it right now,
Yeah.
because right now I'm putting all my energy towards podcasting because I can do it from home. I'm a stay at home, so I can do it, you know, from home and still raise my 2-year-old and my 6-year-old, and I can do everything from like my computer, and it doesn't require that much of a, you know, of a monetary investment so much, and I can still kind of get those creative juices flowing, which is the reason I started it, without the sacrifice of leaving my house and trying to figure out, like, you know, who's gonna grab the kids, or you know what I mean. So it
Yeah.
it is something that I would love to go back to, but right now I don't even know if I could. Now, I always say, let me see, once my youngest is in school and I'll have actually more free
Yeah.
time, hopefully, then maybe I will get back to it, because it's great. It's a lot of fun, and it was something that was very fruitful for me.
Yeah, and that's like the balance of trying to, like, obviously be a family person, or not a person, a family man, have 2 kids and whatnot, and then balancing the podcasting stuff, and then trying to work in writing, whether it be like a book or be, you know, a screenplay of some sort. It is like that balance is so hard to find, and like, you know, for me, like, podcasting is not like that's like, aside from being dad, like, podcasting sucks up most of my energy, because it is such a time, at least for doing this show. Like, that's the one thing I've noticed, like, doing Everything Is Awesome, an interview style show, is way more time consuming than it was even when I did a show that had 4 or 5 co-hosts attached to it, because, like, I have to book the guests, I have to edit the show, like, I'm my own producer now. So, like, and that's like, as much as, like, I agree, like, with you know, Kevin Smith, when he does his live podcast, like, not so much anymore, but a year or 2 ago, like, he was big on saying, you want to do something, like, make a podcast, because my podcasting is cheap, it's easy, you don't have to ask anyone's permission to do anything. You can do a podcast about Leonardo from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles if you want to, and you have an audience. Someone will want to hear you talk about Leonardo. Whereas, you know, when he used to tell people to make movies, like, the thing he never said is, go out there and make a movie, and you're going to need thousands of millions of dollars. Like, it's something that, you know, is just usually financially not something that you can just pick up and do. And it's obviously a lot easier in today's world with the technology we have
No,
now.
of course. But I think, you know, what I find, at least in the work that I'm doing now, which is, I have 2, sometimes 3 of my own shows. I say sometimes because I cover a couple of TV shows on TV8 My Brain. And doing the network and kind of keeping that afloat, you know, I'm balancing that, and also being a mom, and also kind of, like, you know, managing my household, and also, you know, making sure that my marriage doesn't fall apart. You know what I mean? So it's like, so I very jokingly, when I talk to people about it, I always say, you know, when they ask these movie stars, like, how do you balance it all? And they have, you know, they give whatever answer they give. You know, a lot of them don't mention all the help that they have, you know, and all the nannies and all the this and all the money that they have in order to be able to do all the things they do. So for me, I'm sitting at home sometimes when I don't have time to do one of the many things that I'm doing, and I'm just kind of like, damn it, I really could use a nanny right now. I could either use a nanny or somebody that can handle the website for me, one or the other. That would just help me out a ton. But you're right. It's like, it's just kind of balancing it all and being present and doing something really well. Because I feel like sometimes I'm a perfectionist, and I want to make sure that everything is done really well, and we put out really good work, especially for Core Temp Arts. For every show, we put out good work, and it sounds good, and it's good content, and people, because that brings people to us. I'm hoping I dilute myself maybe in thinking that, but also I do wanna make sure that I raise really good people, and I do want to make sure that my marriage lasts for the next 90 years, and you know what I mean, and my house doesn't fall apart. So it's just kind of like I'm learning as I go how to balance everything, and it's a challenge. That's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, and I mean, first of all, I apologize because definitely Everything Is Awesome is like the bottom rung. Like, I don't know how we sneaked in if you're looking for good quality, because as I mentioned on this show numerous times, no prep, no editing. I just kind of turn the mics on and go.
Well, it's funny because every show on Core Temp Arts has its own personality, and yours has its personality, and it's great and it's funny, and I enjoy it, every week, and that's the thing. As long as there's, good quality content, it makes people laugh, it's produced really well. That's pretty much it. It's not that high of a bar. But
yeah, because I can't jump.
No, but your show, I mean, I love Everything Is Awesome. I think it's really funny. Yeah. And I enjoy your conversations and all that stuff. So, but again, like everyone has its own thing kind of going. As long as people are listening and you're enjoying yourself, I think that comes through.
Yeah, and that's again, for the first 8 years or so that I did podcasting, like it was all about how do I do this to make money, and to keep the story short because my audience is tired of me talking about it. Like that's like it was just like it was always such a huge stressor, and not that doing Everything Is Awesome isn't a huge stressor because it is more work. It is, I wouldn't say more time consuming, but it's definitely, it's just more work because I have to do everything versus just a segment or just like, hey, you guys are doing sports, you guys are doing this, and we'll come together and, we'll all talk about it. But it was all about money before. So now doing this is like, where I'm not thinking about the money, I'm not thinking about the numbers. I don't care. I don't want to say I don't care about my audience, but like I don't do things for my audience anymore. Like it's not like, hey, I'm going to do the show I think you want to hear. I'm going to do the show I want to hear. And sometimes that's me sitting in a car by myself pretending to be Batman and talking to myself for an hour. Yeah. Sometimes it's me getting Thor, the fictional character of Thor, on my show. Sometimes it's going to be hopefully in the month of April doing bonus episodes where we sit around and play like tabletop games for the show. So it's whatever like I kind of want to do, and like that's something that I want to do more of this year is like how to like make the show different enough to where it's like it where it's the same show, but we're just doing things differently. And one of those things is like less two-parters. Like I first year, 52 weeks, I'd say we only had 28 to 30 guests. So like the goal this year is to like have 52 guests maybe, or at least 52 different episodes. And just kind of just switch it up and just have fun. That's like you said, like that's for me. Then as long as I enjoy doing it, like this show will never go away. And again, the way I do that is I sit in the car and talk to Batman.
I love that episode, by the way. No, it's great because I feel like for one of my shows, I'm at the other end of that, where I'm just kind of like, it is so much work, and I have a co-host, but it's really me that does. It's me that does all the work from the beginning, from beginning to end, where I'm just kind of like, I don't know if I have the time to do this anymore, as fun as it is, but I have so many other things, not only that I want to do, but that I'm currently doing, that I think I'm going to have to put the show to rest, as much as it pains me to admit that out loud. You know what I mean? And
that's
that's
always the hardest thing to do.
Oh my God, it's really hard, and I haven't decided on that yet, and I'm trying to kind of figure out maybe ways of still making it, keeping it around, but I don't know. Right now is kind of hard to do, and I don't know.
Yeah, I mean we did a short-lived podcast called Late to the Pod that me and my buddy started it was called Late to the Game of Thrones because at the time I had never watched Game of Thrones and I'm still only in season 2, but we started it and it was fun to do it first, and then it just was like, well, now like we're literally just hanging out at lunch once a week to do this show, and like that's not like it's no longer fun for me to do. Like this has now become a job, and I don't want to do it anymore. Yeah. And like I mean, it didn't help that like we started it while my uncle was going through his thing, and like we stopped right when he passed away. So like it was bad timing maybe, and because I could totally see myself saying, hey, let's do it like at least one episode. Like let's just go sit down and talk about Game of Thrones one time. But yeah, it is you need to. I mean, going into my 10th year, like as I hit my 10-year mark this June, I am in double digits of podcasts I have hosted or been part of in some fashion, like at least 14 or 15 podcasts. Yeah. So averaging more than one a year. And I took like a 3 or 4 year break in that 10-year time span. Like I'm a total farce when I say I've been in it for 10 years because there was years that I didn't do it for. So, but yeah, if you don't, that's why I love this show, because I don't foresee it being a show that I end up hating. Yeah. I could see me taking on too many live shows and me saying, okay, now it's starting to feel like work. Right. But, in the back of my mind, the thought process is that maybe we'll bring in some income at some point. So I'm trying not to think about that because, like as I said, that's when things start to go south. So it's all about having fun. Before I let you go, I do want to know what. Was it just becoming, a stay-at-home mom and needing a way to be creative that brought you to podcasting?
Sort of, yeah. I guess we had just moved away from New York, and I had a 10-month-old, and we just bought our first house, and I was kind of home in a new town, and I didn't know anyone. And I was kind of like in this place where I was just like, what do I do with myself? And I did some things in my personal life, but I needed to have that kind of creative outlet because I wasn't writing anymore. The short films, I wasn't mentoring anyone. I wasn't doing anything. So I've always listened to podcasts for, since the early 2000s. And I was listening to all the TV kind of recap shows that I love to listen to, and I was like, yeah, I could do that. I watch a ton of TV, and I feel like I have good opinions about something. Why not? And I think I can do that. Strangely enough, the show that I started with, That Pop This Live, just ended up being a pop culture show where we talked about everything. We talked about sex, we talked about weird shit on the internet, we talked about movies and TV and just our lives. And that kind of, that was the idea. And when I brought it to my sister-in-law, who was a friend of mine from high school, from 10th grade, I was like, hey, do you want to do this with me? We'll get to kind of meet up every week and we just do it, and I'll do all the work. You just have to show up and be the pretty face. And she's like, sure, why not? And that's kind of, I was pregnant with my second baby at the time, but I just did it, and I wasn't sure how to do it. I read a bunch of stuff, but I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna learn as I go. And that's kind of how it began. That Pop This Life was the first one. And then I got the bug. Then a couple months later, I was like, I went to my other friend and I was like, hey, we watch, Scandal and Grey's Anatomy and all that stuff, and we talk about it, or we text back and forth when we're watching it or afterwards. Do you kind of want to do this in podcast form? You just got to talk about it. I'll do all the work. You just show up and be the pretty face. And she's like, sure, why not? And
that's when you get in trouble, when you start saying, I'll do all the work, because then you start doing 6 podcasts and you're doing all the work and you're going to pull your hair out.
So, but that's kind of where I am right now. But no, it's still a lot of fun. And Talking Shondaland was the second one that I created with my other good friend Nicole, and we talk about all of Shonda Rhimes' TV shows, all the shows that she has on the air right now. That's what we talk about. and that has been really fun. Both shows have been really fun, but there are a lot of work, especially that Pop This Live, because I'm reading, I'm researching everything, I'm reading all the articles, that whatever we're going to talk about, then I have to consume the media in order to talk about the media, because it's a show where we consume media and talk about media, and we also relate it to our lives and how it's affecting our lives. And it's a super, super fun show, but it's a lot of work. So that's it. But the kind of network idea, I just had those two shows, and I was like, hey, I have the website already, because it was from my film work, my photography work back, in the 2000s.
Oh, interesting.
And now I'm just putting my podcast on it, and I had my podcast, and I had my photography, my film work on it. And then I met Peter, who hosts Postalgic now, and We Got Five on the network, both on the network. And he's just, we had a really good time. I went on his show, and I did his show with Devin, and I kind of had this idea for what ended up being We Got Five. And he was like, hey, I would love to do it if, would you host it on Core Temp Arts? And I was like, why not? And that's kind of how the network just grew, or just kind of came to be. It wasn't like a conscious decision. It was just kind of like, yeah, sure, you want to come on the show? Why not? And then we kind of created another show, and then, I met Chris, and then he came on, and it just snowballed from there. And it's great. I'm having a really, really good time kind of meeting everyone and putting people on, and not putting people on. That sounds like I'm doing more than I actually am. But, just kind of just promoting folks and just kind of building a community, which is what I like. We're a community, and we kind of help each other out and ask each other questions, or, share listeners, or whatever the case may be. And hopefully, I hope that it'll grow into something more. And that's the goal. That's the process that I'm in now. But I'm only one person, and I'm growing as fast as I can,
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean, there's a reason why, like, it never works for me, because and this is where, like, all the props to the world, because you're doing all the podcast work on top of all the network work, or vice versa. You're doing the network work on top of your podcast work. So, like, there's just so much demand in doing it. Like, it's almost like we're getting to a point in this new media world where, like, you need to have, like, a dedicated person that running the network that isn't necessarily hosting a show.
Yes.
Or if they are, that's simply what they're doing, is they're hosting it. They're not doing
tell me
anything
about
else.
it. Yes.
But that's just unless you're Earwolf or, like, Headgum or Smodcast, like, it's not gonna, like, it's every other podcast network, I would assume, is a lot like Core Temp Arts, where it's just a lot of hard work from the people that are part of it, running it, and
no, definitely. And I must say that I do a lot of, whatever tech work that needs to kind of keep Core Temp Arts going, but working with every host, every really awesome host, you included, on the network, it's so awesome. Like, it's just really, really great to have these super talented, really hardworking, really dedicated people working together to kind of make the best out of the situation. Because we're all busy. We all have lives. We all have demanding jobs. We all have families that we have to take care of, on top of, the work that we just kind of do for fun. And that has also been really, that kind of fuels me when I'm just kind of like, I don't want to do everything because I'm tired, or, or I'm sick. I just spent like 14 weeks with the flu, it felt like, and I didn't want to get out of bed, but that kind of keeps me going when I'm just like, I kind of have to, because everyone, expects me to. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's definitely, grateful as, like, the not having to run the network side of it. Like, it's great. Like, I can say I'm part of a network and not have to do anything. So thank you for taking that burden from me. Apologies for being the what drags you down, the weight, the anchor of the network, if you will. And not the anchor in a good way. That's usually a good term. Everything is awesome.
No, not at all. I do all the work. You can just show up and be the pretty face. That's fine with me.
Yeah, hey, I'm ready to be the pretty face, especially on radio. So, all right. I feel like there's so much more we could talk about, like How to Get Away with Murder, because that's probably one of that's the only show from Shonda, whatever, that I watch. So I feel like we could go more into that, but then I'm going to break my rule of going to two-parters. So, first and foremost, Carly, thank you for
Thank
being
you
on the
for
show.
having me. I guess I have to wait until next year to be on the show if you're going to do the whole 52 weeks of different shows things.
No, because I'm already like I'm sure there's going to be repeat guests. You know, it all depends. So you don't have to wait a year.
Okay.
But
Thank you
the
for
important
having
thing is there are two different technically two different shows.
Okay.
Because two-parters is cheating the system.
Okay.
In my opinion, I don't know. But anyway, go ahead and throw some plugs out for everything that you do. I'll sit here for the next 20 minutes.
Oh, geez. Well, no. Thank you again for having me. This was a lot of fun. If you guys want to check out my shows, That Pop This Life and Talking Shondaland, you can check them out on CoreTempArts.com, along with TV Ate My Brain, Let's Chat with Revel and Friends. We got 5 and a whole host of other shows. We have about 16 shows right now that are all very specific, very entertaining, funny, educational, and you can find something for you on there, CoreTempArts.com. But if
And then there's Everything Is Awesome, which is none of those things.
no, Everything Is Awesome is awesome. Well, they're listening. They know that already. But if you want to check me out on Twitter, you can find me at Carly Vision with a K. That's my personal Twitter, or CoreTempArts.com. Or Core Temp Arts. That's also the Twitter for the network. But all the shows on CoreTempArts.com and iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, everywhere where you will find podcasts, we're there.
All right, great. And obviously, if you're, a super fan, a super friend of this show for as long back as we go, then you're obviously a fan of us. We joined Core Temp Arts for a reason. Mainly the philosophy, if I'm being honest. It's just something that I really agree with. It's something that in the last year and a half of doing this show, I realized how close the podcasting community is, and that's something that Carly put together with her podcast network. So again, thank you for having me on your network. I am as much as I know I'm not the shits, I am the shits on that network. There's so many talented people, and I am just glad to play make pretend of being good with them. And go check out all the shows on Core Temp Arts. I've had Chris on the show, Let's Chat, and there's something there for it's a nice smorgasbord of podcasts. It's not it's just all sports or all talky shows. It's a bunch of different stuff that you can find something that you like there.
Yeah.
And that's and then you follow everyone in the Core Temp Arts group. We all like to sit around and chat too. So
yeah, that's on Facebook, Core Temp Arts Podcast, if you want to join us there.
All right. So once again, Carly, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
You can find Everything Is Awesome on Twitter at RealAwesomePod. You can find me on Twitter at ThatNerdyKev. You can find this show on AwesomePodcast.com and CoreTempArts.com, of course. Make sure you check us out. I don't know who's on our show next week because I'm not a good producer. So we'll be back next time right here on AwesomePodcast.com and CoreTempArts.com. We've been awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Core Temp Arts Podcast Network. To listen to more Core Temp Arts shows, visit CoreTempArts.com.